Goodness, everybody. Hey, everybody. Welcome. It is time for another brand spanking new, as the kids call it. I don't know if anyone says that. Brand new episode of Because Cannabis here on Wayward Media. Thank you for once again joining us. Brand new shows every single Wednesday, 4:20 p.m. on YouTube at Because Cannabis. That's our little tag, our little handle. And then Dustin Kava, as always. Well, actually, not as always, Dustin Kava. It's been 2 weeks. It's been 2 weeks since we've been back together. I flew solo. Easy for me to say. I flew solo 2 weeks ago, and then you had to rock with Raven last week. Amazing job, by the way. I'm gonna give you a little fist bump.
I am so happy that you're back, man. I'm not gonna lie. I missed you last week. I feel Raven just did not get the star treatment that he deserved with me being at the helm, and I missed it. I missed you.
I enjoy watching and listening to, well, always myself, clearly. But the nuances, like Emily's show 2 weeks ago. Thank you, Emily Eisen. That was an amazing, fun conversation. She had just photographed Cheech and Chong for California Leaf magazine. So that was an exciting conversation with this really artistic, expressive individual, which kind of feels more like your jam, right? And then you have an amazing conversation with Raven, who is this really deep thinking, super smarter than two of us combined times affinity kind of spot, right? Real deep into it, just a brilliant doctor. And yeah, so I feel like I would have had a different conversation, but I think it's fun to hear those nuances, to hear the differences. I don't know. I think it's fun when we have the solo shows, but clearly, Wonder Twins activate. Nothing is better than when the two of us get together. We got a great guest today. I'm really looking forward to having our conversation with Angela Mays from thebluntaccountant.com. But before that, Dustin, I got to tell you, I should say I got interrupted. Follow us socially at MeetWM. Subscribe.
Yes, please.
Button. Hit subscribe. We're getting up there. We're climbing up the stairs, halfway there, living on a prayer, not quite. You know what I'm living on, though, right now, Dustin? I'm living on cloud 9. I don't think you even know this because we haven't seen each other in 2 weeks. We're both feeling better, thankfully. But now that we're back together, guess what happened, Dustin? Finally, all this time of putting my thoughts and speaking these words into the microphone and dropping names like they are going out of style. Finally, someone heard me, Dustin. Someone heard me. And guess what, Dustin? I got sent free shit. I got sent free stuff.
Free stuff, like t-shirt stuff?
All right. So it's something I talk about a lot on the podcast, and we will get to Angela Mays from thebluntaccountant.com. It's something I talk about a lot on the podcast. So if you had to guess right now, who sent me free stuff based off what I drop all the time or things I talk about on this show?
Okay. Let me think about this. Okay. If it was Glass, it definitely would have been Licit, but we just did a giveaway and he certainly didn't send Glass. You anything.
Big fan of Licit Glass.
It definitely... Oh gosh, is it okay? If we were rolling up something,
no, you're getting closer, getting warmer, getting warmer.
Oh my gosh! Okay, I'm having to say whether it. King Palm.
Look at what King Palm sent me. I got some really good questions right now. Like, I just got a bunch of free stuff. Is this like, am I liable financially for this? Thank goodness I have someone who can help me answer those questions with Angela Mays and the Blunt Accountant. Look at what King Palm. You know, I talk about how much I love.
We
King
love
Palm,
the rollies.
The rollies, yes. And they got like stuff in here. We even got rolling trays inside of here. I got more different little things. They got these fancy little flavored tips and the long, super cool matches to light with. A couple lighters in there, a butane torch.
Have you had any of the flavored tips yet?
No, I haven't. Well, I've had some of the pre-roll stuff into there, and then just bags and bags, all the sorts of sizes. And then we'll give a shout out to Dan from King Palm. You know, the rollies, the half gram, the smoke sesh,
the perfect
smoked sesh size, as I like to say. So the half gram rollie from King Palm. We're going to give you all the shouts today because you sent me a bag of free stuff. So thank you so much, Dan at King Palm.
I want you to pull out one of the flavored ones. I got to show everybody one of these. These things are fucking brilliant.
One of the flavored tips here. All right. We got to get to our guest here in just a second, but let's see here. What do I got here? Here's the flavored tips. So we got these flavored tips.
Okay. So right two things. One, they do come in the pre-filled, so you can get them in the half Grammies and the 1 grams and so on up. But I want you to open up one of them tips.
Oh my gosh. Make me do ambidextrous things on here, man. I'm not good with this kind of stuff. Wonderful childproof seal packaging by King Palm. Shout out to you guys.
I'm not gonna lie. I loved these. These were amazing for our customers at the shop. Okay.
So we got one of these tips on the screen
So
here.
now I want you to slightly push on the middle of it so you can feel that it's kind of hard. Inside of that is a terpene-filled ball that you're gonna crush. You're gonna crack it. Now that it's cracked, I want you to put it up to your mouth and suck through it so you can taste the flavor.
That is so much bubblegum flavoring, Dustin. I think it was a lot, bro. Oh my God.
So now here's the best.
It's meant to be diffused through your cannabis products and your,
and I will also say that, if you're the type to smoke, say, half of yours or something like that, those tips are the boss because, halfway through your session, you put it out. When you go to start it up again, it kind of tastes like shit. You can pop that terpene pod and finish that other half gram of the Kings or something like that. But I will say, the last 2 years, they have really, really refined them flavors, and now they're up to like 15 or 16, and they're awesome. So if anybody's going to try them, definitely give them a try.
I don't have enough lighting or enough good eyesight to read what all the flavors are, but thank you, Dan. Thank you, King Palm, for sending me a bag of goodies. Dustin and I, we will surely be enjoying those. So shout out to King Palm. It works. Putting it out into the universe works. Doing silly things clearly works, Dustin. And so Angela Mays from thebluntaccountant.com, thank you for joining us and listening to that. Clearly, obviously, as someone who likes King Palms and things, I wasted money on a lot of devices to consume cannabis in. I have found the simplicity of maybe a rolled kind of joint, but I have spent way more money, including how I met Dustin's OG story, buying elaborate devices. But I feel like as an accountant, a lot of people would think you are, really financially savvy. But is there something, Angela Mays, that you have that it just gets your dollar no matter what? What do you kind of just spend free willy-nilly? You don't care who's watching or checking the books. You're like, you know what? Whether it's a treat for your tummy or if it's something fun to play with, like, what do you have to just waste money on? What is worth it in an accountantly trained mind to waste money on?
Oh my God, this has nothing to do with accounting, but I am a candle lover. I love candles. And I went yesterday and bought 3 huge candles. And as I was buying it, I kept telling myself, this is the one thing that I will go on a mission for. For a good candle that the entire house smells of this candle. So that's my thing. That's my guilty pleasure.
Well, now I know what I'm getting Angela for Christmas.
Getting Angela candles. Are you a candle guy, Dustin? Do you like candles? I feel like given your ridiculous beard and you're already like stoner, you're like a stoner starter type, starter kit exactly is what you're wearing right now. Do you go incense? I feel like you're incense and patchouli oil, but do you like candles? Do you like a good, French vanilla or lilac?
You know what? French vanilla is my jam. A little bit of warm vanilla sugar, some shit that gets me. But you know what? No, I will say though that the last year, me and the kids and Candace have been making candles ourselves. Ooh. And they've had such a blast. We'll make, 30 or 40 of them at one time and then have the rest for the year type of thing. And it's been awesome. But in my house, no, not really. I don't really like wood burning smells, and I don't really like, my house is, scent free except for the cannabis.
There is a candle hierarchy. So, for example, Angela Mays from thebluntaccountant.com, what 3 scents, if you can remember, did you purchase yesterday with those candles?
Oh my God, I don't even remember. It was.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me rephrase it then, because
calm or something like that. Breeze. It's always something with calming and breeze because I like going to the beach.
See, that's what I was getting to. There is a hierarchy in people's minds. Like I tend to go to kind of the Swedish ones, like sweet, not Swedish. There's nothing wrong with Swedish, but sweet ones. So like a French vanilla, but around Christmas time, you get these like triple stack cookie sugar extreme things, which get too much. But I also, right. And I tend to avoid the more like linen scented ones. Just shut the front door with your linen scent. Like I don't need that scent. So you are a beach breezy, which I would put it a good strong like S tier level candle. There is definitely like ranks of things, though. I will say I once went into a Yankee candle store. and literally had a full blown, almost needed to call the emergencies, like sinus level attack. Like it shut down every orifice in my face. Like everything was clogged. My eyes looked like it was terrible. I couldn't breathe. I had to run out of the store like a movie, like get me out. And I fell like some, it was a scene, Angela Mays. Like I really, I'm sorry. That was TMI. I know, but it was like, it happens. Candles, if I'm being honest, are expensive, right? And so if I'm just being real expensive, and I would imagine Angela's like someone financially sound, you make a lot of financial decisions when you're buying candles or when you're doing your taxes and stuff. So Angela Mays here from thebluntaccountant.com. Thank you, by the way. I know we always start a little silly for joining us. We are closing in. We're closing in on tax time. This show, we're just a few weeks away from when these taxes are due or you magically file extensions. Can I just say, what is up with that? Is it really, can anyone get like an extension? Because I always hear the 4/15 deadline and then all of a sudden it's like, no, we actually do our taxes in June. Like I just, as an uneducated person, how does that even work? Why is that a thing? Timeout, that feels like cheating to me.
Oh, no, you can file an extension and it's due in October. For 6 months.
Well, see, I don't know, Dust. That seems unfair to me.
You do have to pay.
Oh, all right. There's the rub.
So is it just a $50 fine or is it a 3%? Is it a percentage? Is it like something that makes a big difference?
No, it depends. It depends. But no, it's not. If you follow the law, then you should be good. But no, you won't be penalized if you file an extension. So you're good.
So you're good there. But you said a little key phrase, which is one of the reasons we wanted to have you on here to talk about from the Blunt Accountant. If you follow the law. See, the law when it comes to cannabis is gray. As we all know, we learn about this every day, whether it's selling the product, whether it's processing the product, growing the product, all these different areas have a lot of grayness built into them. But typically something financial, I guess we'll say, is red and black, right? It's either good or bad in that sense. But it gets complicated when it's federally illegal and when it's state legal, and don't even get me started on municipality levels, but it gets really complicated when it's that way. And a lot of it's because of what I know is IRC 280E. And I say those letters in those numbers together. I say them with confidence, Angela Mays from thebluntaccountant.com. I say it with vigor, like I know what I'm talking about, but I'm going to be legit. Not a clue. So IRC 280E, I know it's from the 80s. I know it really prevents people from having, claiming tax breaks on things that are federally illegal. Let's talk through this and IRC or 280E, and then we'll get to know you a little bit. Let's start there. It's what the big topic is.
All right. IRC 280E basically says that no deduction or credit is allowed for businesses that traffic in Schedule 1 to drugs. And that's basically it, meaning that you cannot take any deductions that a normal business would take, or you're not allowed to take advantage of credits that the IRS will allow a business to take advantage of. And that's pretty much it.
So is this, when I've been looking into 280E and I've been looking into how bad it is for these companies, some of the things that I was reading was like, they're taxed upwards of 80% because they're not able to take these, to file these off. And so, people don't really understand that. They see, holy shit, the cannabis industry is just making all this money, or them, they're just, and at the end of the day, they're taxed so high, they actually, there's almost nothing left on the table for the company at the end. Are those numbers realistic? Is 80% reasonable thought?
It does depend on your gross profit, but there have been cases where some have paid 70-80%, and it seems that most of your profit goes to paying the tax. But yes, it has been that high in some cases. Yes.
So,
and this is effectively across the board, right? This is, you are not allowed any deductions. It doesn't matter. You are a company that touches plant matter under the Schedule 1, Schedule 2, and thus you're not gonna, there's nothing. It's not toilet paper. We're not writing off. We're not writing off, anything essentially, right?
There's a caveat, and it's called cost of goods sold. So you're able to allocate some of those expenses that we call below the line expenses, like your regular operating sales and general administrative expenses, you can allocate them into your cost of goods sold. So what 280E, what it allows you to do is you have your revenue, and then after your revenue, you have your cost of goods sold, and then you arrive at your gross profit. You're taxed on your gross profit. So you are allowed to allocate some of your expenses, your operating expenses, into your cost of goods sold, thereby reducing your gross profit.
Okay. So that makes sense. And
I'm trying to go on, BC. I'm trying to fill out this form in my head.
I sort of see where they're going. And once again, this is why, we talk about this a lot, and we've had a lot of small business folks on here, Dustin, and we always say, accountants and attorneys, your two best friends, you're going to have them in almost any startup, but in the cannabis industry, especially, it's going to be extremely important, right? So I can understand, I understand where you're coming from, and I get that, but then I see so many cannabis companies operating clearly, and they're so profitable, and it's a good business to be in, and people want to be in this business, and they're willing to pay this type of ridiculous financial penalties and other penalties and other absorbent fees and a state by state level. They're willing to pay all of it because at the end of the day, the money is there. It just seems to be I've heard of, and these other legal loopholes outside of that. Is there ways to I don't want to say shell companies, but have your parent company, other things? Is the IRS onto that? Has that been maybe 4 years ago, and they've already kind of gotten that area?
Yes. Initially, early on when the industry was new, setting up management companies to manage your plant touching business was a way that a lot of them operated. And I'm assuming that's probably what you're alluding to.
Yes.
So no, you can't.
You can't do that anymore?
No, you can no longer do that. And the reason why I say that is once there's a case, I think it's called alternative healthcare, where I want to say 2019, 2018. I can't remember the exact year, but they were basically, they had a management company type situation set up, and they also had the dispensary set up. And what these companies are doing is dragging their 280E expenses into a management company, and then the management company is paying the employees,
Yes, that's what I would have thought would have happened. That makes sense.
Right. So, but this company was audited by the IRS, and then they challenged it and went to court. And basically, once you drag those 280E expenses into that management company, or whatever you have it structured as, you're now dragging 280E into that company and causing that company to be a part of 280E as well.
Wow.
So basically, there's really no way of getting around it. I mean, there have been plenty of cases, and I'm sure you guys, you've been around for a while, so you probably heard of the Harborside case. And then
yes,
we actually.
So there are quite a few cases out there, and everybody is challenging. All of these companies are challenging 280E because they consider themselves to be legal on the state level. So therefore, they should not have to be ruled by IRC 280E.
Yeah.
But none of the cases are winning when they go to court, because they're kicking all of that back. So what people thought at the beginning, oh, we can have a management company to manage it and not have to have everything be here in the plant touching side of the business and move it here where we can start writing these things off. On this side, it's not panning out. So as far as there being like a legal way of getting around it, 280E is here. It's no way to get around it. It's all about compliance, doing the accounting accurately, and having an accountant that understands how to allocate those expenses that are normally not deductible into your cost of goods sold. So thereby you reduce your tax liability some. You don't get rid of it, but you're able to reduce your tax liability some because you're decreasing your gross profit.
So some of those things would be what is the rent or the lighting in my facility as an operating cost to produce? Is the water?
Rent, some of your payroll costs, and rent, payroll, and in some cases depreciation if you're depreciating equipment that's used to produce, like on a from a grow or manufacturing side. From the resale side, the dispensary side, there's not a lot you can allocate the cost of goods sold. But if you are a grow or a manufacturer, then you have more expenses that you can allocate to cost of goods sold, and you can also have more expenses that are considered cost of goods sold as well. Anything that is used to produce the product, to grow the product, to manufacture the product, those items can go into cost of goods sold. So it's just that you have to have a chart of accounts that is specific to your type of plant touching business, whether it's a grow, cultivation, dispensary, and it just lays out all of those costs, those transactions. So as you incur these transactions throughout the year, your accountant is going to book those into those various accounts, and it makes it a lot easier to see from a owner's perspective what you're looking at, and helps them to understand these are all the costs that you've incurred to, to grow or to manufacture. These are going to be your cost of goods sold. These other expenses that indirectly impact your grow or whatever business you're in, we can allocate a percent of those items, transactions, into your cost of goods sold as well. So it's just keeping very detailed records and having a chart of accounts that breaks all of that out for you.
That brings up two questions. One actually pertains to this cost of goods operating expense thing. Is that why, what is happening when we see a lot of these leasebacks with these facilities for these large MSOs, where that one time they were owning the building, now they're offloading that building to a third party company who then manage they pay rent to, but even though it's partly owned by them. I've always felt like that was to get away from the 280E and kind of get around some of that and have more control over it, of those expenses. But it seems, if that's happening, what would be the point of that anymore? 280E would still be following them if it's the same organization owning it, correct?
Yeah, right.
Well, those are, I guess, setting up like a real estate type company that actually own the business or own the building, and then you can rent the building to the business. It has to be set up in a way that you can do that. Now, what you say, you can't do that. So it just has to be set up in a way where it clearly shows that this building is owned by me, and I also own a grow, and I'm going to lease this building to my grow because I am a real estate investor. Like you have to be able to.
Yes.
It's not gonna be the same as a management company. Put it that way. You can set up your real estate company in a way where it's totally separate, and you're running it as a separate business.
Now that would it makes sense. We've had conversations before about cannabis cultivators more being in the real estate business than they are the cultivation business. And I think a lot of it is financial, right? It's to help the financial part of this business. It doesn't really do anything, but for the operational aspect of what they're doing, but it affects the bottom line, the dollar.
Right. So that is allowed, but you have to really make sure that you have, your attorney and the right people in the room to set that up. So it doesn't, you don't create a 280E issue with that.
Do you think something like the IRC 280E gets even more confusing? Because here is the other thing that, I've heard from people are talking. So now you got all these places that are dealing with federally illegal THC, but federally legal industrial hemp-derived products, right? So now you have this weird combination of these federally legal hemp-derived companies. We'll start with the easiest and the biggest is CBD, but we're learning more and more of these CBG and it's Delta-8 and all these other things that are coming out there. So we have all these things, and then you have is part of this, the industrial hemp business, guys making hempcrete and such who are farming hemp. So how do they deal with that? Does IRC 280 affect that? Or even if it doesn't yes, it doesn't technically on the, in the bottom line.
Schedule 1, Schedule 2 lines.
But it feels very much like the government, and I'm putting some big air quotes here, like still feels those two are so closely linked that do people manipulate that? Let's talk about how does CBD and those federally legal cannabis products work?
Okay. Yeah.
I gotta imagine
because hemp is legal, it doesn't fall under 280E at all. So if you have a hemp business, you can just operate it like a regular hemp business. And I believe it will fall more under farming and agriculture. So it would lend itself mostly to that industry when it comes to accounting and tax. But if from a CBD perspective, and I just recently, and it's so funny you asked me that, I was just recently attended a webinar, and a similar question was asked about, if you were already in a state where they allowed you to sell CBD, and then once it became legal, in that state they made it legal to sell cannabis. How do you want to use marijuana, open up a dispensary and sell marijuana? How do you separate the two?
Exactly.
You can still operate here a dispensary, but you still want to sell your CBD. And it was the person that was giving the presentation, who's been doing tax and all of this for years, since probably the beginning of the cannabis legal industry. He stated that they would have to be two separate entities, and you would probably have to set it up to where there are two different doors you go into. Yeah,
that makes sense. Two thresholds, isolated, and even signage on each of the thresholds. I've seen laws and stuff state for state.
So, yes.
That just feels like a lot of legal.
It is.
We all know, but it feels so silly.
It's that ancillary businesses too. What about the cannabis derived terpenes? What about, a lot of these, how about the testing labs? Because they touch plant matter in their testing, they're not part of that.
Right. And they're not. And that was a question that came up also in the same.
I didn't know that.
In the same webinar. And they said testing labs do not fall under the 280E.
Huh.
It must be because they don't use the plant for profit. Like there's no profitability per se, even though they are, right, testing of it. But in theory, their services are the mechanical testing and really not anything to do with the plant. I'm putting on my lawyer. I'm obviously like a Reddit right now. I'm like a lawyer and accountant. I'm basically a TV show waiting to happen with all this knowledge I'm spouting right now. All facts, by the way.
And I genuinely believe even a lot of these accounting laws and stuff it's based upon the argument that my accountant is making when the audit happens. Why did we do this? What was it for? What were we thinking? Why did this move here and that? So it always felt more nuanced than it did step by step. Your first A, money goes here, then this, I don't know.
And the thing is, a lot of these, like the attorneys in the industry that represent a lot of these companies that are under audit, that go to trial or are just under audit and they don't go to trial. Everything you don't know till you do it, and then you get audited, and then the result comes, and they're saying, okay, now you can't do this. So, when I attended these webinars and trainings, these are the things that they say, like, until somebody tries it and then they get audited, we don't know. So when you mentioned about it being such a gray area, it is really a gray area. You don't know till you do it. So you follow what you know that you can do. And but there are a lot of businesses, because of that gray area. You have dispensaries that will, like, they'll sell bongs and
So is that the same tax? Like, yes, exactly.
So, and then they have the dispensary part. And one of the things that there have been cases where they try to allocate some of those regular business expenses into the
smoke shop
side of it. And that has not been allowed. Only, I want to say Champ was the only one. Champ set the precedent for that, because Champ initially started out, like, I think as an AIDS clinic that eventually became start selling medical marijuana to their AIDS patients. So they had to they were allowed to allocate some of those expenses because they were initially an AIDS clinic or something to that effect beforehand. But if you are a dispensary and then you say, okay, I'm going to sell all of these accessories that go along with what I'm dispensing, you can do that, but you can't allocate 30 or 40% of these expenses here over into a part of your business that's only generating 2% of the revenue.
Yes.
So that's where you have to look at it. If it's if you're selling t-shirts and it's not, but over here, and let's say for instance, you're selling stuff on this side and the revenue here is $75,000 for the year. Okay. But on this side, it's $5 million. It's not gonna fly.
Yeah. Now we've seen some of the things in the. Oh yeah, go on. Sorry.
So you're gonna be able to allocate some of those expenses, but you're not gonna be able to allocate 40% of those expenses. Yeah. You need to have a separate cash register that's selling these items over here, separate from your cash register here, and you need to have that one person here. That's all they're doing. They're not butt tending and t-shirt selling.
Yes.
So they're paid.
Yeah, or even separately employed by the other organization at that kiosk.
These are the things that you're going to have to think about when you do that. So, and your record keeping has to show that, and your policies have to be written to the effect that all the way down to the job descriptions. Because in cases where you're able to allocate, let's say for instance, I work in a dispensary, I'm a bud tender, but at the end of the day, I might go to the back and help, roll joints for the next day or whatever it is. So a part of my salary is going to be able to be allocated to that portion, to what I'm doing after I butt tend. But you have to have clear written policies, job descriptions, and you have to have a system set up where, okay, now I'm logging out as the butt tender, and I'm going to log in the back as the, helper to go through, get the inventory ready to be put on the floor. So you'll be able to allocate a part of those. And that's one of the things you get to allocate into your cost of goods sold, but you have to keep good records to show that. So those are the things that are important.
Gosh, it is. It's
a lot.
It is so much. It's amazing.
Accounting is a lot. It is. It's a lot of work from an accounting standpoint, and it's a lot of work to just for a business owner who all they want to do is, I just want to do what I do. I want to
yes,
grow, right. I want to dispense. I want to manufacture. Like, it's a lot. So, and I think when people go into the business, they don't realize that. And, we're learning it as it happens real time.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a couple of things there, right? It's always changing and those things. And so when people visit you at theblunaccountant.com, Angela, if you had to guess, are a lot of them business owners who are starting out, or are they more people who have already maybe got a flag and are now looking to recover? Like, what is the majority of people in the industry? And I guess the back part of that question really is, do you have a lot of people who are doing this from the start, or people thinking about this, or are you spending
I would
a lot
assume
of time
that that's what you want. You want someone to come.
I feel like that's not what the industry's doing. I feel like that's, of course, that's what we're trying to do today.
Right. Yeah. It's so funny you say that, because when I started working in the industry, people hire an accountant after they've already started. And not at the beginning, because you don't realize, you don't know what you don't know. Yes. So, and it's a lot of cleanup, because if you've already been in business and you've already opened your doors, so you have to go back and account for all that time prior to opening. And then you have to get your books in order for now that you're open. So it's a lot of work. And I was thinking, how can you get people before, at the beginning, when they're awarded their license, whether it's conditional license or the full annual license. And that was where I was like, if I could reach people early on and get them to see the importance of setting up the accounting at the beginning, as opposed to after they've opened, then they already have they're already set up on the right path.
Yeah, your labor has been cut down in half instantly, just because they started with you as opposed to coming later.
And that's when I created it's called Canna Accounting in a Box. Basically.
Yes, I wanted to talk about this. I'm really happy you brought this up, because we spoke to a lawyer a couple of weeks ago named David Patton, and part of that discussion was this idea of, when we first start, to have the lawyer and the accountant on the same phone call, so that the accountant can say, this is why we want to do it with taxes, and the lawyer can say, this is why we want to set it up with the state in this way to account for that. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about the Canna Accountant in a Box, and I also thought, like, shit, if I had a voucher to also talk to a lawyer in that same point that I got my box, now I'm really set up. From day one, I truly feel that. Speaking of the Canna Accounting in a Box, I didn't see much literature on it, and so I was curious of how the actual operation of it. I get my package in the mail, I open it up. Is it a dashboard on a website? Is it a packet of documents that I can then follow through, like SOP agreements, things?
Let's talk about it. Canna Accounting in a Box. Break it down for us.
Yeah,
it's not an actual box that you get. I just kind of.
I gotta tell you right now, Angela, I like you a lot, but my heart's a little broken that I don't get a box. I really. You just saw me open up a whole package of stuff.
Just a picture of Angela comes out of the box, like.
There's your
I'm sure it's fantastic.
Just jumps out.
I just want a little box. So give me a little box with a. I really wanted a box. All right, I'm sorry. Let's hear how awesome it is.
Basically, it gives you everything you need from an accounting perspective so you can be ready to go before you open your doors. Basically, you'll get your chart of accounts. for your specific type of plant touching business. And then you'll get your processes and procedures based on the areas that the IRS will look at if you were to be audited. So it basically helps you to be 280E compliant and audit ready before you open your doors. And the areas that the IRS typically look at when they audit, they're going to audit your gross receipts, basically your revenue. And what we have put together is going to be processes and procedures around how you recognize your revenue from whether you're banked or unbanked. So if you deal in cash, then it's going to be processes and procedures specifically around cash, because with it being such a cash intensive business. And if you don't have banking, the IRS, if you were to get audited, the first thing they're going to assume is that you're underreporting your
100%. Yes,
so
absolutely.
They're going to go in there and perform specific audit techniques to determine whether or not you are reporting all of your cash that comes through the door from your business. So we put in cash controls and processes to show how you're receiving your cash, and then what you're doing when you disperse cash to buy whatever it is you need to buy for the business. So that's one of the areas. And then we look at, they are going to look at your inventory and cost of goods sold. So we put processes, accounting processes and procedures in place that specifically address those areas, and as well as your other expenses and that you incur in the business. So we take all of that, put together all of your controls, your processes and procedures, and implement those. So you already have them going when you open up. Like, there's no having to go back and put all that stuff in place. So you
could have. By the way, we should mention, you find a link right in our comments below. You'll find a link to the bluntaccountant.com. You can schedule an appointment today to talk with Angela and her team at the bluntaccountant.com to find out about Canna accounting in a box. Not technically in a box. We're going to put parentheses, not literally in a box. But it's going to be fantastic on your hard drive, which is technically a box in some weird way. I'm just
so are you then taking these operating procedures that you're handing them, and are you then, I guess if I was to do this on your end, my first thing would be to set up exactly how I want them to do it and hand that paperwork to them. This is your pathway going forward.
We're setting it up.
So then the secondary effect of that would be, I want to create rules on my QuickBooks side of things so that when I insert this into this area, the rule automatically knows where to file it based on your stuff. Is that essentially what you do? And you predetermined rules just based on this operation being so fundamental and the same across the board?
Right. What I do is once we set up the chart of accounts in QuickBooks, and because the way I set this up, Canna Accounting in a Box, is to be turnkey, meaning that I know that early on when you're getting started, you don't have the budget to probably hire an accountant on a monthly basis.
Yeah.
And that's why I created it to where I can put it together for you. And it's a turnkey solution that the owner or whoever can go into QuickBooks, and if they have banking, they can automatically upload those transactions into QuickBooks. And I'm going to teach them how to go in and if a transaction comes in for supplies or whatever it is, there's a supplies account that we can book that transaction to, and you can set up rules as well where it automatically can go in there. So in addition to putting together the whole system, is to also train the owner, because QuickBooks is one of the most user-friendly accounting systems out there. And anybody can pretty much go in and use it once it's set up properly.
It's that setup part, right? That's the key.
Yes.
I think that's where a lot of small business owners, people getting started in such struggle with that. I'd be remiss, Angela, if we have you on the show to not just figure out a little bit about how you got here. You know, we talked a lot about cannabis and accounting and IRC 280E, and boy, we could talk about that for hours and hours and hours, Angela, and I think you could, and you could keep really just educating Dustin and myself, look at me, Dustin and myself on this stuff and IRC 280E. And we might get to that a little bit more before we go, but how, I guess maybe why, like everyone's in, we talk about the why in
you're 4 years in, right?
So why this industry? I mean, were you in, I assume, already an accountant and saw it as an avenue? You have personal calls. Like, what was the reason to take obviously a great backbone of accounting skills and say, I think I can help this industry a little bit?
Yeah, I was introduced. Well, actually, a lady on LinkedIn. She was in the industry,
LinkedIn,
and reached out to me because I was already doing accounting for small businesses, but I hadn't niched down into a particular niche. And I guess she saw my profile and reached out and was like, have you ever considered cannabis? And I was like, no, not really. Like, I hadn't even thought about it. And so she basically sold me. She was part of a training program and sold me on it. And I was like, sure. And that's how I got started. I went through the training program, and I'm actually still, she has an organization where she provides regular training and webinars of people in the industry. So I'm always attending some type of webinar to stay just knowledgeable on what's going on, what's changing, and providing us contacts in the industry, whether it be banking, insurance, anything that can help us help our clients with whatever it is that they need in the cannabis industry. So that's how I got started, and I'm actually glad I did. I mean, my background was accounting. I did accounting and consulting. I worked for the Big Four. I worked in the defense industry, and in the intel industry, with doing management consulting, writing policies and procedure for intel agencies, doing putting together processes and procedures, helping various DoD agencies and intel agencies with preparing for audit.
You go from talking to scary people to people who are scared to people who are paranoid. Like you really.
You're like looking back. Are the accounting types, like when you go to your accounting shindig mixers, I'm sure there's accounting things. Are you now like, are you,
you're the cool one.
Everyone has shindig. Are you like looked down upon as like the weed accountants now? Is there like hierarchy in there?
No, they're jealous. You got guys who are working with like restaurants and medical guys. And then you got Angela, who's like, I just talked to a guy who was smoking a blunt while I was doing his accounting work. Like it worked.
Yeah,
it was great.
It's so funny when you mention that. Oh, I do. I work in the cannabis industry. I do accounting for cannabis businesses, and they're like, really? That's a thing? Like, not a lot of people know it's a thing. And then when you start talking about it, that's when they're like, oh, that sounds pretty cool. It's pretty interesting. A different way to use your accounting background and so, yeah.
I have to ask this real quick. Hold on. I have to ask this because it's right on topical. Because it's very near to me. So when I introduce myself, and this just happened in the doctor's office 3 days ago, when I introduce myself and people make chit chat, small talk as they do at shindigs, they ask you, what do you do for a living? I always say, as I do, marketing. Stop. They may ask more. If they ask more, then I go. But some people, that's enough. So, and then if they say, what field? And this person was like, you work in big tech? And I'm like, no, cannabis. By the way, that ended that conversation because he was a nurse. So when you say it, when I work in, do you go accounting and let them fish, or do you just go all in?
Oh,
just here's who I am. So you are a cannabis accountant. You're not like accounting. Wait for clarification. No, good for you.
Yeah.
I wish I was as strong as Angela Mays right now. That's what I learned. Angela Mays at deepblendaccountant.com. Like, there's someone who is comfortably, we love this term here, comfortably out of her cannabis closet. If you're rocking that, thank you, Brian Adams, for that term. You are Angela May at The Blunt Accountant. Well, I guess if you're going to hand a card that's like thebluntaccountant.com, which is a little tricky to say, The Blunt Accountant.
I think it's awesome. I think the marketing is on point. I think you nailed it.
There's a staccato-ness to say it, The Blunt Accountant. And I enjoy a lot. I'm a very enunciated person. I talk silly and over enunciate words. So to say The Blunt Accountant, like, I could say that all the time. Thebluntaccountant.com, Angela Mays. That's awesome.
And it's official. It's officially trademark. I actually got my email from my attorney saying that it's trademark. Awesome. I got a certificate and I'm about to frame it, and I'm like,
yes. That's congratulations, truly. It's one of those things where you don't think about it. Again, this is what I mentioned it before, but this is your 4th year in this niche specifically. Yes. Yeah, it's one of those things, like, year 1, you don't think about that. You're just like, is this even going to work? Can I do this for a living? Am I specialized enough in this? Yeah. And it's one of those things that, by year 4, when you start thinking about the trademark and you see what you've really accomplished over the last 4 years, I think it is. It's a super powerful moment in the business, and it sets that tone going forward too, that my foundation is built. I know what the fuck I'm talking about. Exactly. I am in this with you for good. It says a lot of things. And so I'm really proud. I'm happy for you.
And the other thing, thank you. And the other thing I realized now that I'm actually in it, you can niche down within the industry. You can say, I just want to work with cultivation, or I only want to work with dispensaries. Or even if you don't want to work with plant touching businesses that specifically touch the plant, but work with like the businesses that do the construction in the industry, you can niche down within the industry. And that's one of the things I'm considering doing, is niching down within the industry, because it's becoming a subject matter expert for that particular vertical. Then you become the go-to, like, that's the expert for cultivation, accounting, period. That's what
the specialization is truly where the value for work comes in. It's not necessarily a dollar amount per hour. This is the value I am to your company. And this is where I also think that
the early adoption of it. Yeah, being early to a specialization, someone who's like the first 2 or 3 in processing IRC 280E specialization is going to put you really high up demand. You'll be hosting those webinars, Angela May. You'll be the ones talking about them. Yeah, man, you'll be doing that. You'll be like, come on. I mean, that's where you got the gift already. So I'm looking forward to that.
Well, and at first it makes sense to cast a wide net and see what your actual clientele is, who actually is coming into, who's finding you, what is that market? And then saying, wow, I really enjoy doing this, or this is what I'm excelling in. I'm gonna do that for good. You're slowly, I think if I had a financial dream team, I would have Angela Mays and Jason Richardson from Bookkeep, who can create the API.
Oh, Dustin froze for a second there. Bookkeep, Angela was a
dispensary uses and connect it into the QuickBooks for you to do your job on the accounting end. Yes. And I actually, you guys are awesome. I love what you're doing. I really like the value you're providing.
Thank you.
So is that what's next for you? Is that, sorry, I didn't cut you off there. Is that where you're going next? I would usually end on that. So you niching down a bit, or what else is in the horizon?
I'm thinking about it. I really am thinking about it, because I've end up having clients in one area, and the more I learn about that particular cultivation, the more I learn about it, and not just from the accounting standpoint, just from cultivation period, just learning about what goes into it and seeing the whole process. I really like that. I really like learning about all the different products that are, everything that's being grown. So that's where I was like, I think I like the cultivation side of, because of everything that I've learned and talking to people that do it, that are that grow. They're so into it, and just learning about how they do it and the various uses for the different plants that they grow. So that just really, I was intrigued by that.
It's interesting.
You mentioned Virginia, that you live in Virginia right now for the DC area. I really would love to end the show in some capacity on something you're looking forward to with some of, Virginia's legislation that has been happening in terms of the legalization and what you've been seeing.
Some head shaking.
The state's conversations.
It's not good. It doesn't sound good, Dustin.
It's not happening. No, literally just Thursday. I want to say this past Thursday, because I get all the emails from, entrepreneur and everything that's going on, normal. And I want to say this past Thursday, I got an email, read an article about Virginia legislation decided to vote against adult use. And it's probably not going to come up again for a whole nother year. So when I went to a conference about 3 months ago in Richmond, everybody was optimistic about what was coming in January. Because everything was already set in place before the new administration came in, and everybody was looking forward to the legal market here in Virginia. And then it got put on hold, and then it was supposed to come up for discussion, and it did, and then it got squashed. So I don't know what's going to happen. I was thinking that it was going to happen because with where I am, DC is right across the river, and so is Maryland. And Maryland just voted to legalize. So I was like, well, Virginia's going to follow suit, because
it would seem like
all that tax revenue that's going to happen in Maryland, you think they want to be a part of it. So I knew that it was I'm like, oh, they're going to do it, but they didn't. So just going to have to cross the Potomac and go over to Maryland or to
it's
DC.
Those few states, Virginia, the West Virginia, the Carolinas, the Alabama, Georgia, obviously even Florida, which is $1 billion plus medicinal, but still doesn't want that adult use, in that regards. We'll see, it's going to be weird. It's going to be changing the rules, the regulations. They're always evolving, right? And that's what makes this industry so hard. So that's why people like Angela Mays in thebluntaccountant.com, you'll find a link below. Subscribe and then go visit Angela. If you are starting a cannabis business, I think you can tell from this last hour, Angela Mays, you are spot on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you
I
so
appreciate
much
it for educating Dustin and I. We really appreciate you having it on. Hopefully we'll get to see you again. That Canna Accountants in a Box is a great idea if you're just getting started.
Yes.
We know a lot of people looking to start up cannabis businesses, and these are some of the questions they have. Can't answer them? Angela can. So thebluntaccountant.com.
Most definitely. I'd rather you start now than later. Definitely.
Love it. All right, everyone. Don't forget, give us a subscription. We'd appreciate it at Meet WM socially. Final shout out, King Palm. Thank you,
King Palm. Thank you.
We got to give King Palm a shout out. I'm not
Some of those better come
taxes.
over to my house soon.
We'll see about that. We're going to share with our friends. King Palm, you're awesome. Thank you, Dan from King Palm. And you guys, thank you very much. We'll see you next week, everybody.